Here we have a problem by Behting from the year 1928, so it's almost 100 years old, this problem here. And yes, a very beautiful motif in my opinion. White has a bishop and two pawns and has the opportunity to win this game, but only with the very precise play that is required here. And I won't say much more than that. Pause the video now to try to find the solution yourself. You have the chance to pause the video and let's first take a look at what happens if you play the most obvious moves here. I think g7 should be relatively obvious. However, then comes rook to g2. And yes, it does attack this pawn here, which is actually a bit unfortunate for us. We can still defend with the king in this position, but what happens now after this move? Black plays a 5 here at this point in the game, and if we promote, then black simply sacrifices their rook. And you might think, we still have a bishop and a pawn here on the board, so everything is really fine, but black is just in time in this race. Specifically at this point here, black could, so to speak, try to distract the bishop with the pawn push on the board, and the king, unfortunately, is just one move too late to be able to defend this important pawn right here. If he could actually manage to defend the pawn, then everything would be fine, but as it stands, the position is only a draw, because with just a lone bishop, you simply can't checkmate. It looks very similar if we play king to f7 here. Basically the same scenario, just with a different move order. It will come to the point where black can sacrifice the rook here, and in that position, as we've already seen, unfortunately, it's only a draw for white. Okay, now let's get to the correct solution. And at first, the move looks a bit confusing. It's bishop to e7. That's the only winning move, the only possible winning move for white in this position. And let's first take a moment to clear up what happens if rook to g2 is played here, just like before. Then the bishop can go to g5, and that's a really interesting motif in this scenario. So often when we want to force a pawn promotion and there's an annoying rook in the way, we have to be creative. Can it be an effective way? To say, okay, I'll just put something right in between, because this pawn here can now run through completely unhindered. Even if the king tries to do something here, we just play g7 and we'll win the game. But after bishop e7, rook g2 isn't even the most committed attempt. Black still has a few other options here. On the one hand, rook to b2 could be quite interesting, saying, okay, if I can't reach the pawn this way, maybe it's actually enough if I just do it this way instead, just to be sure. But it doesn't help at all, because if we give a check here, then it's a similar motif. The bishop simply blocks the path. And this pawn here actually can no longer be stopped from queening. And white simply wins the game. That's something you have to keep in mind, which is why you might not think of bishop to e7 first, because actually the bishop on the d6 square, it wonderfully protects this pawn here. And now black can simply capture it. And you might think, okay, what was the point? Does white really have anything at all to counter here? Because on the very next move, this is absolutely going to happen. Rook to g2, the pawn is captured and nothing at all can be interposed anymore. So how can white still win the game? Feel free to pause the video now. You had the chance to pause the video. And the only correct move in this position is simply to immediately put something in between. With bishop to g5 check, because now I would really like to capture a rook here, and then everything would be fine for black. But now the king basically has to capture, well, he can't capture either, but then there's a bishop in between, and now, at this moment, we simply have a king in the way here, right? And the really annoying thing about this position is that the rook unfortunately can't capture the pawn along the a file, nor can it actually move to g2 in order to capture the pawn in an effective way. So, in other words, the promotion of the pawn can't really be prevented or stopped anymore, right? Well, there is still a defensive resource that black has here. He can just simply give checks here and say, okay, white, I'll just keep putting you in check, and then you won't be able to promote. And now you have to find the right plan again. Where does the king need to move to in order for white to win the game? This king here needs to get to the d file, for example, to d7. And if more checks come here, then he moves to c7 and then to b7. And maybe you can already guess, right? So then at this point, the king moves over to the b2 square. and the king captures this pawn that is sitting on that square, and white has lost the game because now the rook captures thanks to the pawn. No, of course not. So in this position, you should absolutely not capture this pawn here. Instead, we move to a7 because we actually want to hide behind this pawn, because then black can't give a good check here, and rook to b8 isn't possible either since the king covers that square. And the pawn promotion simply can't be stopped anymore. No matter what black tries here, if any move is played here, white simply gets the queen. Queen versus rook are technically one endgame. This one pawn here doesn't change that at all. That was today's study. Did you enjoy it? Then feel free to leave a like. And you're also welcome to subscribe while you're at it. As always, that would make me very, very happy. And I've linked another study for you. Feel free to click on it. Then I'll see you again in the next video.